Hi, my name is Caroline and I'm the Families Worker here at Litchard Mission, and every Saturday I'm making little craft videos for you guys to do at home. So they are based on what we're looking at on Fridays in our family resource called Table Talk, which you can find over on our website that will be linked in a minute. And over the last few weeks we've been looking at the Hebrews Hall of Faith in Hebrews chapter 11, and we've been making this book. So far we have made a front cover for our book. We've learnt about Abel, about Enoch, about Noah, and then about Abraham, and then about his wife Sarah, and then about Joseph, and then last week we learnt about Moses' parents. So this week we are going to be moving on to look at Moses himself. So this is what we are making this week. So if we turn to Hebrews chapter 11, so if you've got your Bible, you want to turn to the New Testament, which is the second half of the Bible, and then kind of towards the end you get Hebrews, and you want to look for the big number 11, and then the verses we are looking at this week are chapter 11 verses 24 to 28. So I'm going to go ahead and read, and 29. So I'm going to go ahead and read those verses now. So this is what it says. It was by faith that Moses, when he grew up, refused to be called the son of the king of Egypt's daughter. He chose to suffer with God's people instead of enjoying sin for a short time. He thought it was better to suffer for Christ than to have all the treasures of Egypt. He was looking only for God's reward. It was by faith that Moses left Egypt. He was not afraid of the king's anger. Moses continued strong as if he could see the God that no one can see. It was by faith that Moses prepared the Passover and spread the blood on the doors. It was spread so that the one who brings death would not kill the firstborn sons of Israel. It was by faith that the people crossed the Red Sea as if it were dry land. The Egyptians also tried to do it, but they drowned. So that covers a lot of things that happened in Moses' life. So we're going to go back to where we left off last week. So do you remember last time we learnt about Moses' parents and how at the time Moses was born, the king of Egypt was killing all of the sons that were born to them. So when they had a baby and that baby was a boy, they knew that that baby could be killed if they weren't careful. So they decided to hide their baby for 3 months, which was a very, very dangerous thing to do. But they had faith that God would keep them and their baby safe. And then after 3 months, Moses' mum took the baby and put him in a basket and placed him in the river Nile in Egypt, and trusted that God would keep that baby safe. And then in Exodus, where we can read more about Moses' life, we learned that Moses was kept safe and that the king of Egypt's daughter found Moses in the river and decided to raise him as her own child. So it's like Moses got adopted into her family. So Moses, when he shouldn't really have lived according to the king of Egypt, ended up living in his house in the palace at Egypt. And Moses was surrounded by everything he could want. But then when Moses gets a little bit older, he learns that actually he about his real family and that he's one of God's people. He's not an Egyptian. And he sees that God's people are suffering and he doesn't want them to suffer, and he doesn't want to live in the palace of all of his riches if they are suffering instead. So he decides to run away from Egypt and he leaves Egypt. And while he's out of Egypt, God comes to him, and we have this famous moment with the burning bush, which is what our craft is based on today, where Moses sees a bush that is on fire, but the actual branches of the bush aren't burning up. And when Moses approaches, God speaks to Moses directly, and God tells Moses that he's heard all of his people and how much they are crying and how much suffering is going on with them, and God is going to use Moses to free him. And Moses isn't really sure about this to begin with, but he does agree to do it, and he goes back to Egypt, to God's people. And he goes to Pharaoh and tells the king of Egypt to let God's people go, just to let them go, let them leave Egypt. And Pharaoh keeps saying no. And so then we get the 7 plagues of Egypt, where God sends all these different plagues to Egypt, and after each one, Pharaoh still says no, until we get to the plague that is mentioned in verse 28. Now this was the last plague, and it was the deadliest. And God said that every firstborn in Egypt was going to die, every firstborn son. So that included their children and it included their animals too. but God told Moses to paint the blood of a lamb over a door. And then when the angel of death came over Egypt, when they saw the blood on the door, they wouldn't kill any of the firstborn sons in that land. So this must have been very scary for God's people at the time. But when they painted those doors and when Moses helped them to paint those doors, they were all having faith that God would keep his promise to them, that no one in that house would get harmed. And that's exactly what happened. And so the next morning, Egypt wakes up and lots of people have died, but all of the Israelites have been kept safe. And so Pharaoh lets God's people go. But after they've left Egypt, he kind of changes his mind and he sends an army after them. And so God's people cross the Red Sea because God parts the Red Sea for them so they can cross it on dry land. But when the Egyptians try to do that, the sea comes back down and they are all swept away. So that's kind of everything that was mentioned in these verses. So we can see that there were lots and lots of times in Moses' life where things must have been really scary and really confusing. And we know that Moses didn't originally have much confidence that he was the right person to do all these things for God. But Moses kept trusting in God because he had faith in God and he knew that God was going to keep his promises. And when God said that this is how it should be done and that Moses was the man for the job, Moses decided to have faith in God and trust that that was true. And just like the Bible said, that Moses had faith and it was as if he could see the God that no one else could see. Moses had that relationship with God, that it was as if he could see God in front of him when no one else could. And by keeping his eyes fixed on God, he was sure of God and he was sure of everything God told him to do. So this is today's craft where we've got the burning bush and we've got a Bible verse above it. And I will go ahead and show you guys how to make it. So the first thing we want to do is head to our website where you can find the PDF for this week's craft, and I'll link that up on the screen now. You need to download and print it, and that will give you 2 pieces of paper that look like this, and you need to colour them in. So we have our first page, which is our base page, which has just got some sky and some grass, and then our picture frame here. And once that's coloured in, you can put that to one side. And then our next piece of paper looks like this, kind of. You have a cloud of smoke, a picture of Moses, another picture of Moses and the bush, and then you need to, in this space here, to draw a handprint and colour it in to look like fire. So I've just gone for orange, but you could go for yellow and red as well, or you could do lots of different handprints if you wanted. And what we need to do is look at our front page, and this is our Bible reference. So this tells us where we can read about Moses in the Bible for the Hebrews Hall of Faith. So we need to go to Hebrews 11. So Hebrews is kind of towards the back. So Hebrews, and then we're in number 11, and we need to find verses 24 to 28. So here is verse 24, and all the way up here is verse 28. And we are going to be writing out some of this verse in the crowd. So I think the verse we are going to be writing out is verse 27. Yeah, verse 27. So in the cloud of smoke, we are going to write out Hebrews 11, verse 27. So I accidentally started writing a bit too far down, which is why I had to kind of scoot down here, but that's okay. So now that we've written out the Bible verse, the next thing we need to do is cut all of these different things out. So as you can see, I've cut everything out and I've made my handprint a lot smaller so that it'll be able to fit on the page properly. So now we are just going to stick everything down. So we'll start with Moses. So we're going to take the bigger of the two Moses, the one with a smile, and we are going to stick him down in the picture frame. So I'm using some double-sided sticky tape, but you can use whatever you have available to stick Moses down. So he just goes in the centre there, so we know who we're learning about today. And then over here we just need to stick everything down in a certain place. So the cloud is going to go along the top here like so. So we are going to take some double-sided sticky tape and stick that down too. Not like that. There we are. that goes up into the corner and then along the top, and it should fit so that your page is exactly half. And then we'll stick Moses down in this corner here, because he's going to be looking at the bush. So he goes all the way down here. And then here is where we are going to stick our handprint first to be the flames of the bush while it's on fire. Oops. So I'm going to stick that there so it kind of, the flames are leading up into where the smoke is. So like that. And then the last thing we are going to stick down is the bush itself. And we are going to stick that here to show that the bush is definitely on fire, but none of it is burning up. And then we've got Moses looking on. And now this is our page for Moses, but it's too big right now. So we need to fold it in half, like this. And then on the inside, stick it all down together so that it's one page that cannot open or close. So stick it along this edge, along this one, and then along the top too. And then we just fold it and stick it down, and this is our page all about Moses finished. So we have Moses, a picture of Moses, and Hebrews 11 verses 24 to 28 like we read earlier. Now when we'll turn over the page, we'll see Moses with the burning bush where the bush is on fire but none of it is burning up, and then in the smoke we can read Hebrews 11 verse 27. So that is today's craft all finished, and I'll be back next week with the next craft where we'll be looking at the next person in the Hebrews Hall of Faith. So I hope you guys enjoy this craft, and I'll see you next week. Bye!